Anyone who works with or around Donald Trump eventually ends up getting burned, and JD Vance is learning that lesson the hard way. Focused only on the 2028 Republican presidential primary, Vance just got sidelined by his own boss. Before we dive into how Trump is using his failure to broker peace between Ukraine and Russia to undermine Vance, a quick shout out. If you enjoy this channel, leave a like. Hit that subscribe button and support our work. Now let's start with the person who called it perfectly last night, Lawrence O'Donnell.
Before his meeting on Friday in Alaska with Vladimir Putin, which accomplished nothing other than distracting news media attention from Donald Trump's relationship with Jeffrey Epstein, Donald Trump said this.
I want to see a ceasefire rapidly. I don't know if it's going to be today, but I'm not going to be happy if it's not today.
There was no ceasefire on Friday, but Donald Trump still said that he was happy after his meeting with Vladimir Putin, which was widely declared a failure, even in some Trump-supporting media. And 72 hours after saying, I want to see a ceasefire rapidly. I don't know if it's going to be today, but I'm not going to be happy if it's not today. Donald Trump said this today.
I don't think you need a ceasefire. I like the concept of a ceasefire for one reason, because you'd stop killing people immediately, as opposed to in 2 weeks or 1 week or whatever it takes. But we can work a deal where we're working on a peace deal while they're fighting. They have to fight. I wish they could stop. I'd like them to stop. But strategically, that could be a disadvantage for one side or the other.
They have to fight. There's Donald Trump saying they have to fight. Donald Trump, who has given up even trying to get a ceasefire, after trying for less than a day to get a ceasefire, now says they have to fight. No, they don't. They were not fighting until Vladimir Putin invaded Ukraine, thereby winning Vladimir Putin the legal status of war criminal, a status that Vladimir Putin reestablishes every day. Vladimir Putin kills children deliberately. Vladimir Putin targets residential buildings knowing that children are sleeping there, that grandmothers are sleeping there, that non-combatant people of all kinds are sleeping in those residential buildings. And Vladimir Putin wants them dead. And Donald Trump says he has to keep doing it. They have to fight.
Donald Trump has no real interest in peace, and he's not using his power as president to defend our allies. When it comes to going after a media company or a college, he flexes every bit of his influence. But when it comes to serious threats, like Putin's ongoing war in Ukraine, Trump does nothing. He sends troops over trivial matters, yet remains silent on global atrocities. And his vice president isn't much better, as his own comments about Ukraine show, before Trump tossed him under the bus.
What I said to the Europeans is simply, first of all, this is in your neck of the woods, this is in your back door. You guys have got to step up and take a bigger role in this thing. And if you care so much about this conflict, you should be willing to play a more direct and a more substantial way in funding this war yourself. I think the president, and I certainly think that America, we're done with the funding of the Ukraine war business. We want to bring about a peaceful settlement to this thing. We want to stop the killing. But Americans, I think, are sick of continuing to send their money, their tax dollars to this particular conflict. But if the Europeans want to step up and actually buy the weapons from American producers, we're okay with that, but we're not going to fund it ourselves anymore.
What about Israel?
So JD Vance thinks it's Europe's problem. It's not Donald Trump. It's not Putin. It's the fault of Europe that we have not seen an end to this war. And if we want an end, then they gotta step up. Apparently, babysitting Donald Trump during the summit with Zelensky yesterday wasn't enough for JD Vance. He really needs to see more out of those leaders because it is ultimately their responsibility. And Donald Trump agrees, right? Oh, he doesn't. Well, whose responsibility is it to end this war? Well, apparently to Trump, it's JD Vance. And one of the worst blows to JD Vance's political aspirations possible, and I want to get into it all, Trump hands Vance Ukraine peace deal he can't win. Donald Trump has given Vice President JD Vance an expanded role in coordinating a peace deal between Russia and Ukraine, and what could end up being a crucial litmus test ahead of his 2028 election. In the wake of a historic summit in Alaska and Washington, Trump announced that Vance would work with Secretary of State Marco Rubio and the president's special envoy to help resolve the bloody conflict in Europe. The move is believed to be the first time Vance and Rubio, who are often touted as future Republican contenders for the White House, have been brought into such a major foreign policy challenge together, but some question whether it could end up being a poison chalice depending on success or failure, particularly as doubts remain over Putin's desire to stop the carnage. At least it's a better assignment than Biden gave VP Harris with immigration, said veteran political analyst Larry Sabato, referencing the former vice president's early role in trying to tackle the U.S. border crisis. Trump announced Vance's latest role in a Truth Social post on Monday night after the historic meeting with President Zelensky. But questions remain about Russia's willingness to negotiate an end to the war, given its foreign minister, Sergei Lavrov, played down the prospect of a direct meeting on Tuesday. It is also unclear what role America and European countries will have in protecting Ukraine through security guarantees. Trump on Tuesday ruled out putting U.S. troops in Ukraine as part of any future peacekeeping mission, but the White House remains open to providing air support to Kyiv. The issue is likely to be a balancing act for Vance, who has previously opposed further U.S. military assistance to Ukraine. The vice president has been notably quiet since Monday's summit, and his office declined to comment when asked about his coordination efforts and what he hoped to achieve. Donald Trump either knows he can't solve this crisis, doesn't care, or is too focused on his next White House remodeling project to act. This is a major problem for JD Vance. Vance faces a lose-lose situation. If he fails, it damages his credibility as a new political figure. If he somehow manages a deal, it would directly conflict with his previously stated positions on Iran and Ukraine, undermining the very wing of the right he's trying to build. Essentially, Trump is throwing JD Vance under the bus, and this comes at a time when Vance hasn't offered much support on major issues like Epstein. His political future is on shaky ground, and analysts like Nicole Wallace have broken down exactly how this is playing out.
Age-old principle that you can fool some of the people all of the time, and all of the people some of the time, but you cannot. You cannot fool all of the people all of the time. Donald Trump, take notes, because right now the American people are mad at you. Call it a reckoning if you want. Not just for Trump, but for those lawmakers who've hitched their wagons to the MAGA movement. Tomorrow will make it 7 months since Trump's second term began. I know it feels like 11 years. His report card, though, is so bad it's going to need a signature from a parent. Overall, according to Pew, his approval rating is in the dumps, with just 38% of all Americans on his side. That compares to 60% who disapprove of Donald Trump's performance as president. It's a near record low for him. On tariffs, which are the signature tool of his economic masterminding, he's 23 points underwater on tariffs. On foreign policy, amid the pomp and circumstance, amid a flurry of meetings with European leaders, Trump is 14 points underwater right now. And on his administration's handling of the Jeffrey Epstein controversy, largely ginned up by his own coalition and base of core supporters, Pew says just 25% of all Americans approve of how he's handling that. And it compares to 70% who do not approve of how Donald Trump is handling the Jeffrey Epstein files. Before you write any of that off as a small matter, go beyond the numbers. Look at what elected Republicans are hearing about the so-called Epstein files. This is from Wyoming. Wyoming is a state Donald Trump won by nearly 50 points a few months ago.
I I don't know if that vote's going to come up on the floor, but what a lot of people don't realize is that is for the courts to decide.
So you're not going to give us an answer on
it is for the courts to decide. Those files are sealed. It is for the courts to decide whether the files can be released.
And they're declining
it is a separation of powers issue. It is for the courts to decide.
Grand jury transcripts aren't going to get released, right?
I can't.
There seems to be a lot of sentiment in the House, on the right and the left, to see what's in those Jeffrey Epstein files. Do you support the release of those files?
I support. It's up to the courts to decide. It is up to the courts to decide.
Thank you.
It's up to the courts to decide. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
It's cute when MAGA is for judges after they're against them, and then for them again. That was Congresswoman Harriet Hageman. She replaced Liz Cheney, being called a sycophant by her own constituents. Here's more from her town hall.
We have to have mail-in ballots. My question to you was, how do you feel personally of stripping Americans of those foundational tools of mail-in ballots? Mail-in ballots.
Mail-in ballots are not foundational tools.
So you just said we have to protect it, but it's not foundational.
You're fully capable of exercising your right to vote without a mail-in ballot. You are absolutely fully capable of exercising your right to vote without a ballot.
You said that we don't.
I don't think Donald Trump really cares about his approval rating or the future of JD Vance. At this point, it's unclear what he even wants. Does he want a third term? Probably. Will he try? Almost certainly. But his recent obsession with heaven, the Nobel Prize, his legacy, and donations to his library, all while funneling corporate contributions into personal perks like his jet, shows he's prepared to go down with the ship. For JD Vance, that's the ultimate nail in the coffin. And yes, we'll keep tracking this story every day. If you want to support our work, hit the subscribe button, leave a like, and if you've stuck around to the end, drop a blue heart in the comments. And until next time, I will see you soon.